so much for having me. It is truly an honour to be here. How are we all doing?
Great.
Love it. I hope, and I sincerely hope, that you will still be that enthusiastic and that upbeat at the end of the talk. It is a difficult subject. It is a subject that will evoke emotion, and I'm under no illusions. I know that there will be people in this room who will have been personally affected by suicide. A recent American study showed that out of those surveyed, 85% of people questioned had some personal exposure to suicide. In the UK, figures from Papyrus, which is a suicide prevention charity, showed that 200 children of school age every year take their own lives. 4 school children per week. This is a scandal, this is a tragedy. And yet we don't talk. We are embarrassed, ashamed, overwhelmed and fearful. And so silence reigns. And yet we would all want to reduce suicide rates. We all want to fight back against this scandal and this tragedy. There are 3 ways that we need to go about reducing suicide rates. The first, prevention. Offering people alternatives, educating, raising awareness, reducing stigma, encouraging people to talk. Whether it's in schools, workplaces, communities and families. Intervention. There will be times when we need to make direct intervention steps at points of crisis to prevent the immediate harm of a person who might be in your care. And that is vital, and that's key. But the third area, which is what I'm going to talk to you about today, is a term you may not have heard before, suicide postvention. Has anyone heard the term? No. Because we don't want to think about it. So what suicide postvention is what do we do if the worst should happen? In the aftermath of a suicide, what steps do we take to support those left behind? To help them manage their grief, to continue that prevention measures of raising awareness and offering alternatives. Because, let's be under no illusion, this is an incredibly high-risk time. Studies have shown that in the event of a suicide, between 10 and 60 people are directly impacted, who have to deal with those questions, that doubt, that fear, that horror, that trauma and guilt. In the case of a death in a school, of a young person, that figure can be far, far higher. A study by the University of Manchester looked at young people under the age of 25 who'd taken their own lives over a 2-year period. Out of the 922 young people, 1 in 9 of them had been recently bereaved by suicide themselves. Suicide, if not managed, if not supported, if not cared for, can be contagious. So what do we do? We bury our heads in the sand at the moment. That's what we do. We don't want to face it. The idea that someone in our lives might be feeling these emotions, might be feeling these thoughts and these feelings, we simply can't process it. We don't want to acknowledge it, especially if we're dealing with a child. We are left desperately unprepared. And then if the worst should happen, well, we know what can happen. It's even got a name, the Werther effect. This is an 18th century novel. A young man, bereft in love, takes his own life. Following that publication, there was a trend of young men across Europe found dressed in the outfit, carrying a copy of the book in their hand. We need to acknowledge this contagion of suicide, if not managed, can be real. It's scary. Of course it's scary. It's terrifying to be supporting someone who is undergoing such deep emotions, left behind in the wake of a death by suicide. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I do the wrong thing? What if I tip them over the edge or make things worse? So what could I do? I'll lie. I'll pretend it was an accident. I'll pretend we don't know. I'll shield them. I'll hide them from the truth. But we know this is an information age. Topics like this are discussed, disseminated and shared. If you, as that person, that caregiver, that trustworthy adult, cannot bring yourself to be honest and open with a child or young person, you will destroy that relationship, you will destroy that trust. So what do we need to do? Postvention. We need to prepare ourselves to prepare for the difficult times ahead. You may well have heard of the 7 stages of grief: shock, denial, pain and guilt, anger, bargaining, depression, testing and acceptance. Now this journey is very, very different for all different people, and phases can be repeated and returned to, and it can affect different people in different ways. But when we're talking about death by suicide, as one person who was bereaved by suicide put it, this is grief with the volume turned up. We need to be prepared to help this child, this young person, ride these waves of crushing, overwhelming emotion. I don't have time to talk you through all the sections today, but I'd like to focus on 3. Pain and guilt, anger and depression, because this is where we can take practical steps to support and care for the children who are vulnerable and in need of our support. Anyone left behind by suicide will be racked with guilt. Why didn't I spot the signs? Why didn't they feel able to come to me? Why couldn't they talk? What more could I have done? Should I have done? If we're talking about a child, these feelings are compounded and multiplied. Was it something that I did? Why didn't they love me? Why couldn't I save them? And that can be crushing. If you are going to support a child, you need to hammer home, get this message across that they are not to blame. They are not responsible. And this message needs to be repeated over and over. It's human nature. We will play these thoughts, these feelings over in our head, questioning and doubting ourselves. We need to be a rock. That just because a person has chosen, and I question that word chosen even as I say it, to die by suicide, this does not mean that they did not love them. The feelings behind suicide and suicidal thoughts are complex and unclear. Mental health issues are cruel. They affect how we see ourselves, how we interact with the reality around us. Love can still exist and does still exist. This is a problematic point, that the only person responsible, not to blame, responsible, is the person who has died by suicide. This is not about blaming that person or laying it out there, but ultimately the responsibility lies with them. And I speak as someone who has been at that point where I felt suicide was the best option for myself, for my family, for my friends. I take responsibility for getting to that stage, and it's problematic, and you can question that if you like. But the important point to hammer home in conjunction with this is that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. That having suicidal feelings can be normal, but taking that step towards suicide is not the only option. That there is support, there is help, there is guidance, there is love. Anger. Of course you will feel angry, because it can feel like that person has chosen death instead of a life with you. That seems like a choice that no loving person would make. So you would question, well, could that person actually love me? Anger is normal, but anger can make us behave irrationally. We know that those bereaved by suicide behave in reckless ways, don't care for themselves, take risks, self-harm, act out. This is understandable, this is normal, but we need to keep that child safe. We need to get other people on board. It's too big for one person. Whether it's friends, family, police officers, teachers, youth workers, social workers, support lines, build a support system around yourself to offer the best care. And reassure that child or young person, you're not going anywhere. We've got to remember that as a person supporting a child, you are very likely to be going through these stages of grief yourself. You may well be feeling a huge amount of anger. And I'm not expecting you to bottle that up. I'm not expecting anyone to be able to shrug that to one side. But you can role model that anger. You can show, yes, I'm angry. Yes, I'm overwhelmed. But we'll work through it. And we will channel this anger positively to make sure that this event does not happen again. The depression phase is difficult. It overwhelms us. It can make us doubt what the point, what the purpose of life is. It can make us question every decision we've ever made, every relationship we've ever had. If left unsupported, a child can start to experience suicidal feelings themselves, to start to doubt if it's just inevitable. So we need to know the warning signs. Losing interest in hobbies, interests, giving away possessions, telling people that they feel there's no point. We said about the self-harm, self-neglect, feeling like being a burden, giving up on future dreams, and finally making a plan. These feelings, these emotions, these signs can be hidden, can be shielded, especially if that child knows that you are grieving yourself. I don't want to be a burden on this caregiver. I don't want to worry my mum, my dad, my teacher, so I'll hide it. I'll keep it to myself. So we need to talk. We need to have those discussions. As we said, silence is the biggest killer. If you are concerned about a child, ask the direct question. If you get nothing else out of today's talk, ask the direct question. You're not going to put a thought in that child's head that's not there already. By saying, look, I want to make sure you're safe. Have you ever had thoughts about killing yourself? They are not going to go, do you know what, I hadn't, but that's a cracking idea. I say that flippantly, but I mean it because this is what we think. But these thoughts are going to be there, especially in the wake of a suicide. If we are calm, if we can measure ourselves, we make ourselves available to someone to go, who they can approach and say, yes, sometimes I do. Thank you for telling me, let's deal with it. Let's manage it together. Because these feelings are normal, but it's managing. It's knowing that you don't have to be alone. These feelings, these thoughts, these issues, I hope from the bottom of my heart that you will never have to worry about this. I hope that it never affects you. But if it ever does, I want you to have that little bit of knowledge, that seed of knowledge inside, that there is a path through, that there is groups out there. You might well have heard of Childline, Papyrus, Samaritans, to offer that support, to have an external person who you can reach out to, who the child can reach out to. Childline have figures that show every half hour a child contacts them experiencing suicidal thoughts. And that's a scary figure. But on the flip side, that they know that they can turn to them is wonderful. In the event that the worst should happen, there are organisations out there who can offer care, offer support, whether it's crews, whether it's those under the Support After Suicide Partnership, who have a wealth of resources out there. I encourage you to look them up. Throughout all of this, your own self-care must come first. You need to be in the best position to look after that child, that young person. You can't pour from an empty cup, as the saying goes. Prioritise your self-care, look after yourself. You will need help, and there's nothing wrong with that. Being strong for your family, for your friends, for the people around you does not mean neglecting yourself. 10 minutes is such an inadequate time to talk about such a huge emotive subject. So if you do want to look at more, there is resources, as I've said, out there. 2 fantastic publications, Help Is at Hand by Public Health England, and Finding the Words from the Support After Suicide Partnership. If you have the opportunity, if you have the need, if you know someone who might be in need, direct them there, because it will give you a fantastic insight. In all conversations that you have, whether it's about suicide or mental health in general, be loving, be kind, be patient, and overall, be fearless. Thank you.